Hello, everyone. Hi, I'm Stuart Fischman. This is the Web Yeshiva. And this evening, we're going to be talking about the mitzvah of matzah as interpreted by Maharal of Prague. And before I start, I just want to say a few words about Maharal of Prague. Maharal of Prague obviously lived in Prague, and it's famous as a site of tourism for an ancient synagogue called the Altneu Shul, and which really does exist, and for a mythical creature called the Golem, which is some Yiddish legends say that the Maharal of Prague made this thing that would defend the Jews during riots, and it's kind of I visited Prague with my wife a few years ago, and it's kind of sad, in my opinion, that now that all the Jews from Prague were killed in the Holocaust, for all intents and purposes, Jewish tourism is a big deal. And I remember there was a Golem bakery, there was a Golem pharmacy, and Prague's biggest cultural attractions are the Altneu Shul and sites that were frequented by the author Franz Kafka, whose father was Jewish. So now that they got rid of all of the Jews, the people in Prague can make money from Jews. I just found that depressing, but some people find it interesting. I don't know. There's no such thing as a golem. Just I want to get that over. The Maharal of Prague was a great thinker. He was a prolific author, and he did not make a golem. I just want to get that point across from the outset. Okay, so now that I got that point, my little rant about Prague and its Jewish tourism out of the way, we can talk about matzah. Matzah, before we get to the Maharal of Prague itself, there's like a paradox in the way that the Torah presents the mitzvah of matzah. In Parshas Re'eh, the pasuk is, and this is in Parshas Re'eh, 40 years after the desert, 40 years after Yetziat Mitzrayim. Lo tochal of chametz, shivas yamim tochal of matzos lechem oni. You shall not eat chametz with the korban, and the 7 days you shall eat matzot lechem oni. Okay, matzot lechem oni. I'm not even going to explain those words yet. Why do we eat matzot lechem oni? The Torah tells us, because you left Egypt in haste. Said you shall remember the day that you left Egypt all of your lives. So matzah is a mitzvah of remembrance. It's a commemorative mitzvah. The Torah says, so matzah has to do with the leaving from the departure from Egypt, how you left Egypt. You left in a hurry. Now you go back to Parshas Bo, Shmos Perek Yud Beis. This is before we left Egypt. And Hashem gives us a mitzvah for what's called Pesach Mitzrayim and for Pesach Doro. How are you going to celebrate tonight? How shall you celebrate in the future? You shall eat this grilled meat with matzah. And in the future, you'll eat matzah for 7 days. Why are they eating matzah before they left? And why are they going to celebrate a holiday for 7 days of eating matzah before they left Egypt in a hurry? And the leaving in a hurry is in Pasuk Lamed Tes. And they baked their dough, what they took out of Egypt, as matzot, because they didn't have time to let the dough rise. They were expelled from Egypt. They couldn't hang around. And they didn't take any bread with them. So yes, we ate when we left Egypt, there was matzah. We were expelled. The Bechor dies. The Shem Paro says, "Get out of here." We couldn't hang around. So why did they eat matzah before they left Egypt? Why were they eating matzah on the night of Yetziat Mitzrayim before they were expelled? Why does Hashem tell them you're going to eat matzah? There's going to be a 7-day long holiday before they left Egypt. This has to be reconciled. The Ramban in his Parish to Bra'eh makes a point which the Barbanel is going to develop. And then we'll see what the Maharal of Prague does with it. But I like to work chronologically. So the Ramban is a Rishon. There are a lot of ideas in this pasuk. I'm not even going to define oni yet, but it's not positive. Okay? Lechem oni. Hashem commanded that we should remember that we left Egypt in a hurry. And it was only because the Egyptians didn't give us much to eat. Okay? So matzah has a dual message. There's a message of redemption, shiatzu b'chipazon, and there's also a remembrance that we were slaves and we didn't have much to eat. So there's there are two messages in the matzah. It alludes to both ideas. And we say that this is the bread of oni that our ancestors ate in Egypt. Or we'll see the Gemara in a minute that the oni can mean either affliction or poverty, which we'll see in a second. But matzah doesn't have any added ingredients. It's just water and flour. We don't bake. Sephardim might be eating matzah shira if there are any Sephardim listening to this. Ashkenazim don't eat matzah shira at all on Pesach. So what's oni? So Rashi says lachem oni. It's the bread of affliction. And it's interesting, if you look in Haggadahs, in English translations, for halach ma'anya, this is Wikipedia, this is the bread of affliction. This is Rashi. Oni is affliction. You look in another translation, and there are other translations out there. This I got from Safaria. This is the bread of destitution, ani, the bread of poverty. That's actually kind of where the Gemara goes with lechem oni, and it's a Gemara in Pesachim. I just got to get to it. Okay, Amar Shmuel, lechem oni. Okay, lechem oni. It can either mean affliction or poverty. So the first thing Shmuel says is lechem shalom dvarim harbe. It's the bread of the Seder. At the Seder, we need to talk. So it's a play on words. Alna can mean to reply or to respond. The child asks 4 questions. We explain the Seder in Yetziat Mitzrayim in front of the matzah. It's lechem she'onimam dvarim harbe. Davar acher lechem oni ani ksiv. Al ayin no yun means poverty. Ma'ani dacha b'prusa. Afkan b'prusa. A poor person can't afford a whole loaf of bread, eats a piece of bread. That's why at the Seder we break the middle matzah, because it's the bread of ani, it's the bread of poverty, or like they call it destitution. So it could be oni is affliction, which is Rashi, and it could be ani, poverty, which is how the Gemara understands it. We break the matzah in half before you can move on in the Seder. And there's a place for both explanations, as the Ramban himself says. But the bigger question is, why are we eating matzah? Are we eating matzah to commemorate? And what are we commemorating? And whatever it is commemoration is after the event. So why did Hashem tell us to eat matzah before Yetziat Mitzrayim? There's nothing to commemorate. Like, what is this? So the Abarbanel wrote a parish to the Torah. It's well known. And he talks about this. In the Haggadah, we say this Mishnah from Rabbi Gamliel, and I just have to open it up. If you just give me a moment. With bet. Bum, bum, bum. Come to Papa. No, I'm waiting. Okay. Where'd you go? This is famous. Gamliel says, there are three things you have to talk about at the Seder. Pesach, Matzah, and Maror. Explain the Pesach, explain the Matzah, and explain the Maror. Why do we have to talk about, what's the kernel of the idea of Matzah, according to Gamliel? Matzah al-Shum Shenigalu v'Seinu Mitzrayim. We eat matzah to commemorate the redemption from Egypt. They took their dough out and they baked it in a hurry. So matzah is commemorative. If matzah is commemorative, and Rabbi Gamliel says it's commemorative, then why did Hashem tell us to eat matzah before we left Egypt? Okay, what do I do about this? This is all from the Barbanel. It's a very long commentary. Before we left Egypt, this mitzvah to eat matzah on an evening of the 15th of Nisan was told us on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Okay, like why? In anticipation of what? Why are they eating matzah? And since it's true, Hashem did give us the mitzvah to eat matzah before Yetziat Mitzrayim. And why is Rabbi Gamliel saying that matzah is a commemorative mitzvah? It is an anticipatory mitzvah. Hashem gave us the mitzvah of matzah in anticipation of something. So it's not commemorative. You can't be anticipatory and commemorative simultaneously, at least according to the Barbanel. So what are you going to do with this? So Barbanel has, and he looks at it from all sorts of angles, and he just says, I can't, this demands an explanation. How can Rabbi Gamliel say they were eating matzah because of that pasuk that says we didn't have time to let the dough rise and make normal bread? Because we ate matzah before any of this ever happened. And that's a fact. So he says, the fact that there was a mitzvah. The mitzvah was given on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. It's part of Parshas HaChodesh. You're going to have a holiday of 7 days of matzah. Before Yetziat Mitzrayim, this mitzvah was given. But why? So he has an interesting idea. It seems to me, this is why I think is closest to being correct. He writes, Hashem, yes, indeed, on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, before Yetziat Mitzrayim, Hashem gave us a mitzvah. On the night of the 15th, you're going to eat a korban Pesach with matzah and maror, and you will celebrate in the future a 7-day holiday with matzah and no bread. This was an anticipation. It was an anticipation of the miracle. You're going to leave Mitzrayim in a hurry. So eat matzah now, because you're going to not, because in 14 days, you're going to be leaving Egypt in a big hurry. So they never question. So why did Hashem give the mitzvah if it's just commemorative before the event? Okay, like, so why did he give us the mitzvah on the 10th day of on the Rosh Chodesh Nisan? Omnam ilo nitna mitzvah zos lisa achrei tzeisam b'Mitzrayim v'yishal yomagishim amiras ha'geula. Hashem wanted us to really appreciate the fact that we were tossed out of Egypt and because of this miracle of Makas Bechoros. And if you're told about something good that's going to happen, like you're anticipating it, you're looking forward to it. So they can eat matzah, which is weird. It's weird to eat matzah. We're doing something weird tonight because in a few hours, we're going to be leaving here in a hurry. If Hashem would have given us the mitzvah of matzah and the Isser of chametz after all of these events, it might not have made such a great impression. That's the pshat of the Abarbanel, why we ate matzah before Yetziat Mitzrayim. And as the Ramban says, he elaborates, the Ramban says, indeed, matzah has both. Matzah commemorates the redemption, which is something positive, and also commemorates the affliction or the poverty, which is something sad. And that's why during the Seder, there's certain foods that we lean, right? Derech haseba, derech cherut, and things we don't. Maror is not happy, doesn't commemorate anything happy. So we don't recline when we eat the maror. We recline when we drink the 4 cups of wine. We recline when we eat the matzah because really it commemorates redemption. Right, that's just an introduction to matzah. I just want to talk about that. Okay, so any questions?
Not yet.
Not yet. And we anticipate questions. It's anticipatory. All right, so Rabbi Dr. Maharal of Prague. He has a lot of issues with all of this. And he wrote a parish on the God called Gvurat Hashem. It's a book, not a very big book, but it's a very important book. And this is what he has to say about halach ma'anya. Okay, halach ma'anya. Okay, whatever translation you like. Let's just look at it again. Halach ma'anya. Let's call destitution. The Gemara goes for poverty also. That our ancestors ate in the land of Egypt. This is the bread of destitution that our ancestors ate in the land of Egypt. He has an issue right away. Is this the bread that we always ate, or is the bread that we ate once and then we left? If you go back to the Ramban, which people like the Abarbanel has like serious questions with this Ramban. The Ramban kind of indicates that matzah was what they ate in Egypt. In Egypt, we were slaves. We had very little bread and very little water. And then you have the whole question, well, when our ancestors were complaining in the desert about the man, whenever they complained about the man, they said, oh, no, in Egypt we had great food. We had pots of meat. And like all the Mefarshim say, well, if you're slaves, who was throwing all these pots of meat at the slaves? So whether they were just looking for things to complain about or not is another issue. But Ramban seems to say that indeed they ate matzah. Matzah is like crummy bread. I don't know anybody who really enjoys matzah. And it could be that's what they ate. But Maharal of Prague isn't so sure. Halach ma'anya. This is the bread of poverty / affliction. Yesh lisha, I can ask a question. Why is matzah called lechem oni? A negative, whether it's poverty or destitution or affliction. You can make a nice matzah, doesn't have to look like a poor person's matzah, and without getting into the whole question of matzah ashira, which is a whole nother kashrus question and a midah question, and Sfaradim do eat matzah ashira, and Ashkenazim don't eat matzah ashira. I had a picture here. Where's my picture? I lost my picture. All right. Now I feel bad. If I can't find a picture, I feel bad. Here it is. There it is. Matzah ashira. Ashkenazim don't eat it. Sfaradim do eat it. This is flour mixed with eggs and fruit juices, and it's sweet. I'm Ashkenazi, so I don't eat it. Sephardim do eat it. It's a whole nother, that's another issue for another day. But except for Leil Seder, you can actually eat it. Leil Seder has to be lechem oni. But during the rest of Pesach, if you're Sephardi, you can just go to town with this. So not every matzah is just flour and water. So why is it called lechem oni? What's poor about it? It's not necessarily poor. It could be matzah ashira, rich people's matzah. Bread rises with yeast. The whole point of matzah is it doesn't rise. It's low. It's flat. Maybe that's why it's called lechem oni. I've seen some people write that. Tamashain said, I heard another shot. Matzah is not something that's appetizing, and once you eat matzah, you really don't want to eat anything else. That's why it's the bread of the poor people. It's filling. Poor people can't afford large meals, and it's hard to digest. So poor people eat matzah. And he says, I actually saw a pshat that means matzah. The Egyptians didn't want to feed us. They gave us matzah. All right? But he doesn't like these ideas. These ideas are contradicted by the psukim. They're totally nonsensical. Nowhere does it say in the Torah or in the Gemara or in the Midrashim that the Jews ate matzah in Egypt. On the contrary, when they complain, when our ancestors complained to Moshe Rabbeinu about the Matzah, oh, in Egypt we had such terrific food. We had fish, we had meat, and now we're eating man. So you see that in Egypt, presumably they were telling the truth to Moshe Rabbeinu. They did have decent food. No one was eating matzah. Okay? And so again, we eat matzah not to commemorate the slavery, not to commemorate what the Egyptians did or didn't give us to eat. It's because we didn't have time to let the dough rise. The Torah tells us why we ate matzah on Pesach. And this is his big point. Matzah is a bread of redemption. You don't talk about poverty when you're talking about redemption. If matzah commemorates redemption, it has nothing to do with poverty. So he needs a new concept, how to relate to poverty, which is a really amazing idea. And that's what I wanted to share with you tonight. Why are we eating lechem oni on a night of redemption? Perish davar. There's matzah ashira, which has all those ingredients which are visible on this package. And we'll look at it again. Okay. Matzah ashira is eggs, grapes, apple juice, all sorts of sweet things in it. There's matzah ashira, and then there's lechem oni, which is just flour and water. Now, where did I lose my Maharal of Prague to? Okay. So what does it mean to be rich and what does it mean to be poor? When you have ingredients in the matzah mix, such as honey and oil, it's called wealthy matzah, matzah ashira. It enriches the bread. Poor people have only themselves. They have no material possessions whatsoever. They just have themselves. When you have a matzah, which is only flour and water, which is the minimal dough, I'll call that lechem oni. Okay. And if you put yeast into it, then it's going to rise. And it's even better than matzah ashira. So now we have to, okay, so I've defined oni means something that's all by itself, as opposed to ashir, which has many things. So why are we eating lechem oni on the night of redemption? Might tell me to be poor is the opposite of being free. Why are we talking about poor on the night that we celebrate freedom? Now comes his big idea. That's not an issue. Poverty represents redemption, which is totally contrary to any capitalistic ideology. Poverty represents redemption. Why? How? To be redeemed means you're not attached to anything. Freedom is the ability to be unattached. That's redemption. Slaves are attached against their will to a master. Slaves are not free because they're attached. Anything that represents wealth is not autonomous. Rich people are attached to their possessions. That's in Pirkei Avos. The more property a person has, the more worries a person has. Wealthy people are attached to their possessions. But the poor person who's unattached to anything is redeemed. Now, if you're just going to talk about matzah per se and say that that's lechem oni, and then a person might say, look, nobody equates poverty with freedom, okay, which he accepts. About lechem oni hazeh, this lechem oni, it's not so much the bread, it's the lechem oni represents freedom as much as it represents the redemption, the exodus. Literally, the exodus means to go out. Naomi Ma'am, Nun Ayin Mem Yud, but it's a different shorish in Hebrew. Naomi is Nun Ayin Mem, if that's what you mean, Miss Man. Naomi is Nun Ayin Mem Yud, it's a different shorish. There's Ayin Nun Yud, which is Ani, and Naomi comes from Nun Ayin Mem, which means pleasant. Is that what you're talking about?
No, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you, yes.
Okay, yeah, no, I didn't mean my name. I meant like myself. Like, as I'm thinking that it's like only can mean like
that's
isolated.
That's Aleph.
Oh, is that the same?
Aleph Nun Yud. This is Ayin Nun Yud.
Is Ani?
Those are two different words.
I wonder if there's like a relationship, or is the word oni also, is it related to
you
any
can
other
make a
words?
drasha. People make drashos. If you want, you can make a drasha.
Oh, interesting.
It's interesting. But anyway, matzah, he says, is about the Yitziyah. If you go back to the pasuk, why are we eating matzah tonight? Go back to the pasuk, because it's about the Yitziyah. Yatzata mitzrayim. Yam tzeitcha me'eretz Mitzrayim. It's the release from all attachments. Matzah represents being released from attachments. That's why it's relevant. Not so much the poverty. The Maharal of Prague is not saying poor people are necessarily more free or happier than wealthy people, but matzah symbolizes unattachment, and that means leaving Egypt. It represents our leaving Egypt. Okay, and we go on. Okay, it's Tziyah Can we start in the stuff is cloud? We were attached to Egypt. We were released from that attachment. Matzah is unattached food. It's just flour and water. It's autonomous. We became autonomous. So it's not so much that matzah is the bread of freedom, it's the bread of redemption. And redeemed people have no attachments. You're redeemed. We're redeemed from slavery. It's Leil HaYetziyah. And flour and water as a food are unattached. No other ingredients, just flour and water, the minimum. That's ani. And this will symbolize for us redemption. And redemption is the removal of attachments. Well, matzah ashira, but you can't eat matzah ashira on Pesach. Bread, matzah with orange juice or apples or grape juice. And yotze, it's matzah, it's kashla Pesach, but you can't do the mitzvah with it. Yesh also matzah tziruf, because this matzah has ingredients, it's attached. Well, mashkishan ba ein kan geula. So matzah ashira does not represent redemption. That's why Pesach is in the first month. Why did we have to leave Egypt in the first month of the year? Okay. Redemption again means being autonomous, not being attached, being separate. We're separate from everything. That's what redeemed means. The second month of the year is attached to the first. That's why it's second. It's to be second means I followed something. I'm attached. I'm subsequent to something. But the first month of the year, Nisan, isn't subsequent to anything. It's the first. And that's why, again, it's unattached. We had to leave Egypt on the unattached month, eating the unattached food. Klal davar. What we talk about redemption, I'm removed from other people, I stand by myself. I don't need other people. I'm unattached to other people. I'm redeemed. That should be on the first month of the year. And something new relates to time, and we became free in the first month. And now you can understand this pasuk simply. Pasuk says, for 7 days you will eat matzah, again, lechem oni, which he calls the bread of poverty. Okay, because you left Egypt in a hurry. Perishutachol lechem oni, again, the lechem oni. Shualechem ha'omed ba'atzmo. It's the autonomous bread, the independent bread, the unattached bread. And it's tafos ozul so. Why do I have to eat this bread? Because you left Egypt in a hurry. So what? Why did Hashem have to get us out of Egypt in a rush? Why did you have to have Parah say, "Kum, get out"? Mahirus, we're not attached to time now. We had to leave in the first month. Okay, we had to leave without any time delay. There shouldn't be any delay of time. At the first moment that we could become free, we had to go. No dilly-dallying. We shouldn't be hanging around. Because the more you hang around, the more you're attached to time. He says this is a very wise insight, and it's something that needs to be understood. So that's the Maharal's big insight into Oni. It's not commemorative. It's about redemption. And the redemption had to take place instantaneously, because to be redeemed means to be unattached, not to time, not to things, and not to other people. We left and we weren't bound to Egypt anymore. And that's what That's what the matzah represents, the being unattached. It's not so much commemorative of the slavery, which is lechem oni, the bread of affliction. It's the bread of poverty. It's the poor bread. But why are we we're not commemorating poverty that we're poor slaves in Egypt. It's a sort of a celebration of not being attached to Egyptians in general or to things. That's why matzah is the thing that's unattached. There are no ingredients in matzah. He goes on. Why does it have to do with redemption? Poor people have nothing. All he has is himself. In this world, we think it's something it's a deficiency to be. No one says it's good to be poor. There's a mitzvah to give tzedakah. He's not celebrating poverty. He's making a point that in this world, which is made up of combinations and complexities, we would view the simplicity of the poor person as a deficiency. We view this as a chisaron. We live in the world of things that are built, that are constructed, more than one thing. But the simplest has a certain supremacy. Minimalism has a certain supremacy. This night we needed redemption. We needed to be freed from our attachment to Egypt. This is another idea. The Mekubalim have a huge thing about things that are done by human initiative, what's called Iturata del Tata, and things that happen purely on Hashem's initiative, Iturata del Mala, comes from Hashem. We left Egypt, Hashem made all the miracles, but we got to Yamsuf, Hashem tells Moshe to tell the people to go. We had to show our faith in Hashem, we had to jump into the sea. All the Midrashim about Nachshon ben Aminadav was the first person to jump in. We had to do something on our initiative. Yitzat Mitzrayim wasn't done by our initiative. We were slaves. Hashem sent Moshe Rabbeinu. Hashem made miracles. Everything came from Hashem. And Hashem Echad. Hashem is the ultimate simplicity. The ultimate lack of complexity is Hashem Echad. And that's what the matzah, which is simple, represents. That's what the poor person represents. Simplicity, a lack of being compounded of many disparate parts. The Geula came from Olam Elyon HaPashut, the ultimate simplicity, the ultimate unity. Hashem is Pashut, not Hashem's simplicity is incomprehensible, but Hashem is Achad. So we needed to represent that Hashem redeemed us. Hashem was the ultimate Achad. We need to eat bread, which is ultimately the ultimate simplicity, the Lechem HaPashut. It's itself. Matzah is itself. Flour and water makes matzah. The same thing as Gemara in Shabbos. There are various words for how leather is processed, and you get the hide, and eventually you end up with cloth, the parchment. There's a type of intermediate stage called matzah, which isn't bread. It means the hide before you even tan it. Something that is unprocessed, untampered with, not complex is matzah. It's true in the making of parchment. There's a word matzah. It's true in the bakery business, matzah. On Mitziat Mitzrayim, we were elevated above this world, which is made of many, many parts. And Hashem, who does not have many, many parts, Chalila, Hashem Echad, He redeemed us. And that is the highest Madrega. That's the Madrega Elyona. The highest Madrega is Hashem, who's echad. He brought us out of Egypt. That's why we eat bread. And he goes on. The Kohen Gadol, on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year, all year long, Kohen Gadol had Shmona Begadim, which were very, very colorful. The ephod, which is Tchelet Argaman, had blue wool and dyed red wool and gold. Why is he wearing his highest madrega? That's Yom Kippur. He wears Big Day Lavam, simple white robes, because that's the highest madrega. Simple is the highest madrega. He's going into the Kodesh HaKodeshim, which is the holiest place, the most elevated place spiritually. He wears the simplest garments. He wears Bigdei Lavan. Simple is spiritually better. Again, he's not telling that poor people should be happy. We have a mitzvah to help poor people, and we should make their life more complicated by giving them more aid. But spiritually, simple is better. Matzah is the simplest food. The Bigdei Lavan of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur are the simplest garments. Matzah is the simplest food. Water and flour with nothing added. And that's why it represents redemption, not necessarily freedom. It represents redemption, which means to be unencumbered. Matzah is unencumbered, and we are not encumbered. That's what we eat. Matzah lechem ani pashut mikol. It's the simplest possible food. That represents we were redeemed by the highest madrega, and the more elevated you are, or something is, the less complicated it is. That's why we eat matzah, because we left Egypt in a hurry. We were not, it was instantaneous. We weren't no wasted time. Hashem is above time. Hashem is timeless, of course. Time is the opposite of Hashem, who's timeless. The less time you spent in Egypt, the better. Less time is close. You're closer to Hashem. Everything else that happens in nature takes time. It takes an hour and a half for my chicken soup to cook on Erev Shabbos. It takes an hour and a half. It takes time. I don't know. It takes time to fill the car with gas. It takes time to get to work in the morning. Everything takes time. Hashem doesn't take time. Hashem is beyond time. That was the Pripazon. We were beyond time. And that's why we commemorate the rush, the instantaneous exit from Egypt was beyond time. Okay, simple, it's uncomplicated. That's everything about matzah has to do with redemption. Any questions? No questions?
Yes, yeah, a couple of points.
A couple?
Yeah.
Good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So there's an earlier point made about how we left in the middle of the month, so we couldn't have been, the mitzvah wasn't given for matzah because we were leaving immediately. It was given right after we were saved from the 10th plague. It's about that, but which ties in with your points you've just here as well. But also, you're making the point about the matzah being simple, whereas the breads from Egypt were known. We know this historically. They were very fancy and very complex. The Egyptians were famous for their bread, and it's a form of. They were also very famous for their beer, also a form of chametz. So when we have the prohibition of the matzah, we're ending up with a prohibition. With the prohibition of chametz, we're prohibiting Egyptian practices.
No.
For which were very well known.
Okay.
Idolatry, which also ties
Thank
in with
you.
your quotes of the Maharal.
Oh, thank you. That's an interesting point. I don't know anything about Egyptian bread. Okay, very good. Okay, thank you.
Beautiful ideas. That I don't know. Did we answer the question that why did we leave it in the middle of the month instead of like the first of the month if everything is like.
That's an interesting question. It's like, why not the first day of the first month? That's a good point. I mentioned
maybe I,
Lee Nether. I'll look into that. Why do we wait until the 15th of the month? Then?
Yeah.
Okay, it's a
I
good
was
point.
thinking
To
with the
Mommy
moon,
Prague.
I was thinking maybe it has to do with the moon,
It
because
might.
that's, I don't know.
It might. The Chagim are usually in the middle of the month. That's a good point, though, according to Mommy Prague. It's a good point. Okay. All right, so let's go on. That's all the observations and questions for now. Okay. So back to work. Okay. Okay, I have a lot more to say about matzah. How can I should demonstrate to you that this bread of affliction is really the bread of freedom and redemption? The point that the Barbanel made. If this was purely commemorative, then why did they eat matzah before Yetziat Mitzrayim? Okay, why? Okay, like the Barbanel says, or Barbanel said that Hashem gave them the mitzvah knowing what's going to be in the future. But he wants to get, I think, something more fundamental. Because it's not commemorative. This is not, we don't eat this bread to commemorate what happened. It's like there's a bigger idea in play, the idea of simplicity. The idea of simplicity. It's not that, because we left in a hurry and we didn't have time to bake to let the dough rise, that's why we're eating bread which is baked without the dough having risen. He says, no, it's not commemorative in that sense. It's representative. Hashem wanted to teach us a lesson about what it means to be redeemed, to be unencumbered, to be unattached to things. And he wanted to have that lesson before we left Egypt. He wants us to keep that lesson forever. That it's redemption, and that to be attached to things, to be attached to a world which is just full of complexity is not ideal. That's the lesson. Yes, eat matzah tonight before you leave Egypt. As someone just, I don't know who just spoke about the Egyptian bread, which was complex and famous for its complexity and its elaborateness. No, get rid of that bread. I want simple is good. And that's redemption. And he says that's Hashem promises to Avram Avinu. He says at Brit Bein B'Tarim, your descendants will be strangers in a strange land. They'll be slaves and be afflicted 400 years, and they will leave with great wealth. So there are three things in this prophetic promise. Will be slaves. Hashem promised to punish the Egyptians, and Hashem promises they will be freed from the Egyptians. That's where we have maror. You need to remember the slavery. And and we have to commemorate that. We wait the Korban Pesach, which represents the fact that Hashem judged the Egyptians, and we shech the Korban Pesach. Hashem shechted the Egyptians' firstborn, and then we were redeemed, which is the matzah. And matzah is redemption. That's why we do these three things at night. Now, Shmuel's first brush on lechem ani is from ona, the verb to respond. This is the bread about which we have discussions. Perish. Really, lechem oni means the simple bread. Really, it means no yeast, it doesn't rise, no apple juice, just flour and water. How come they're making these drashos? It's matzah. You all know what matzah is. How come this matzah is not just matzah, it's lechem oni? Just say eat matzah. What's the lechem oni idea? There must be an idea to this, right? Okay. There's an idea here. Go back to the pasuk. Where's our pasuk friend? Here. Tachlov matzos. We all know what matzah is. It's that flat bread that doesn't rise. Obviously, lechem oni is something else. There's matzah, and then there's lechem oni. There's an idea to lechem oni, and that's what the Gemara is trying to figure out. Why is it? Why is the Hashem saying eat lechem oni if he just said to eat matzah? Isn't that enough? Elakach kasiv lechem oni she'anam d'raim harbe. We have to talk. We have to discuss it. Because of matzah, we know about Yitzias Mitzrayim. But Rabbi Gamliel says you have to explain three things: Pesach, matzah, and maror. That's the Mishnah. I have to explain the matzah. I have to explain. Besides the matzah, I need to explain the Pesach and the maror. So why is the matzah special? I also have to talk about the Pesach and the maror also, right? Ain't a kasha. It's the matzah that represents redemption. The matzah. Miss Mann, that's exactly what we're talking about, Miss Mann. Why? I just unmute.
How is okay? Hello.
Yeah, I'm
Hi. I
listening.
missed a little bit of the beginning. So, why does it, like what we're saying seems to contradict what it says already in the Agada? Why is that?
What?
What we're saying seems to like contradict what it says in the Agada. Because in the Agada it says that the bread didn't rise, they have to refast. They ate the bread in Egypt, and so why is it that?
That's exactly it. You missed the first few minutes.
I missed the
Okay,
first few.
Okay. We talked about that at the beginning, and I only have a few minutes left.
That's okay. That's okay. Okay, I'll listen to the recording.
Yeah, we talked about at the beginning. Okay. So why are we talking about? Why is the bread the lechem oni? Why isn't the Pesach called keves oni? If it's onim from harbor, why isn't the maror called maror oni? Why is it the bread? The bread represents deliverance. Law Pesach, not the Korban Pesach. Pesach just means Hashem spared us. Doesn't mean that we were redeemed. Hashem passed over the Jewish houses and he struck the Egyptian houses. There's nothing there about redemption in the Korban Pesach. Pesach doesn't represent redemption. Maror certainly doesn't represent redemption. Well, matzah yitziyah, but the matzah is redemption. The matzah is redemption because it's Shivas Yom Tov of matzos. Because eat matzah for 7 days because you left in a hurry. Matzah because the whole point of Mitzvah Mitzrayim was the redemption. Okay, so that's the Maharal of Prague. His two ideas about matzah, and I posted that you can read the whole Maharal. It's on the website. Lechem oni. Why are we eating? Why is matzah, which represents redemption, which you see from the pasuk as something to do with our redemption? How does oni, which is poverty, represent redemption? Poor people are not happy, but what poor people have is simplicity, and not so much. Again, we're not endorsing poverty. We have to help. There's mitzvah to help poor people, but redemption means being freed of encumbrances. Slaves are not free because they're bound in servitude to their masters. Matzah, on the other hand, is just flour and water. It's autonomous. Flour and water, it's the minimum. And that's why we have lechem oni on a night that was celebrating redemption. And redemption also involves simplicity because Hashem redeemed us, and Hashem is the ultimate simplicity. However, the difficult is impossible to grasp intellectually Hashem's essential unity, but to be essentially unified is good. And if pure regular matzah, this flour here, let me just no, it doesn't open. Open there. This matzah is just flour and water. That's like that's the most unified possible, uncomplicated bread, as opposed to matzah ashira. There's lechem oni and there's matzah ashira, poor bread, rich bread. There's eggs, there's grape juice, there's apple juice. Okay, that's not simple. You're not it's kashel Pesach, certainly is, especially for Sephardim. It's not chametz, but you're not yet to the mitzvah with it because it doesn't represent the unity of Hashem who took us out of Egypt. Matzah represents Hashem's unity, and that unity is what we're celebrating, what we're thanking Hashem for. Okay. Any questions?
No, just one.
Beautiful ideas. Beautiful
Yes. Someone had a question?
Yes. According to what you said, that they were told on the first of the Chodesh that they were going to be redeemed on such and such a day, and they'd have to, eat the matzah. And they told them basically what's going to happen. So, it wasn't a surprise. So
that's what the Barbanel says. Yeah, Hashem didn't want it to be a surprise. That's the Barbanel's answer to the question.
Is this the only place that Hashem actually gave a date for redemption?
The only redemption that we have in the Torah.
Right. Anywhere else in the Tanakh, anywhere that there's going to be a redemption, is this the only
Hashem promises Nisim, like he goes to Gidon. Yeah, yes. In Sefer Shaltz, it's Barak. It goes, all Sefer Shaltz, there's a Navi who tells the person, look, Hashem wants you to do this because on such and such a date, this is going to happen. And like he sends Gidon. Gidon says, he tells the Malach comes. He says, go and you'll save Am Yisrael. Dvorah goes to Barak. He says, you go attack Yavin and you're gonna. He doesn't say, if you don't go, I'm not going. So the says, so I'll go, but you should know that a woman is going to get the victory and not you.
Okay.
So there are other times Hashem sends a Navi to say, yeah, this is going to happen.
But this is the only in the Torah itself, during the 5 books, that this is the only place that they give a date for redemption.
Well, that's it. That was the great bond slavery, and this was the great redemption. And
so it is a commemoration. It's an anticipation of what's going to happen. So it's something that's exciting to look forward to, and not something to be say I'm going to have to eat this lowly piece of bread. But it's something that is something to be happy about.
Exactly. That's what the Barbanel says. The Barbanel he tries to reconcile this.
Yeah.
On the one hand, it's commemorative. On the other hand, if it's commemorating, how come they had it before they left?
Right.
But that's exactly it. Hashem gave them the mitzvah, so they should look forward to something.
Right.
That's exactly what the Barbanel says.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
He also
Yes.
didn't he tell Avram that in 400 years, I guess it was, they would be slaves in Egypt and they'd be redeemed. He told them that.
He told Avram that, but they were there already, and let's see something happen already. it's Avram Avinu had great bitachon.
Right.
After all those years in slavery, the people didn't look. It was hard. They didn't have a date.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Chodesh Tov. Chodesh Tov.
Chodesh Tov. Right.
Chodesh Tov. Good night. Bye-bye.
Good night.